The Revolution Podcast, Episode 7, The Plague Dogs. Golden Spiral Media presents The Revolution Podcast. Support for The Revolution Podcast is provided by listeners like you and our affiliation with HostGator. Not only does HostGator host over 8 million domains and provide powerful, reliable hosting, HostGator is environmentally friendly. Learn more about HostGator and their renewable energy credits by visiting goldenspiralmedia.com/HostGator today. Welcome back to the Revolution Podcast, everybody. I'm Daryl.
And I'm Jeremy.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Before we get started, I want to spend just a few seconds here and give a shout out to all the revolutionaries here joining us in the live show.
Right.
Make a long story short, tonight was parent-teacher conferences. We thought we had them scheduled in time to be over and maybe be 15 minutes late. It is 45 minutes late, and we're just now starting the show. You guys have been troopers tonight. Thank you for being patient while, I don't know why I thought parent-teacher conferences would go as scheduled, but it was ridiculous. But anyway, thank you guys in the live show for sticking around, even though we're running late tonight. So you were patient as well. Thank you.
I was, and you're always welcome.
Well, I know you really just want to, I came home, right? We live next door to the school. We walked down the sidewalk. Jeremy's standing on my front porch. He has his laptop plugged into the AC unit on my porch, and he's stealing my Wi-Fi, talking to the revolutionaries that are in the chat room.
I don't know if I was in the chat room yet, but yeah.
Oh,
I was stealing your Wi-Fi.
You were just stealing my Wi-Fi?
Yes.
And you weren't even talking to the revolutionaries?
No.
Unacceptable. Off with your head.
All right. Well, I think you have the wrong show reference on that one.
Anyway, we're so glad you guys have joined us tonight for episode 7 of the Revolution Podcast, as I mentioned, called The Plague Dogs. This was written by Ann Cofell Saunders and directed by Felix Alcala. Are you familiar with his work, Jeremy?
No. I might be familiar with his work, but the name doesn't ring a bell.
I'm taking away your Battlestar badge. He directed the miniseries, and he also directed Exodus Part 1 and Exodus Part 2 of Battlestar. At least according to the good folks over at IMDb. They're usually pretty solid on that stuff. So I thought you might be familiar with him, but
I believe Exodus Part 2 probably has one of the single best sci-fi moments in TV history.
Oh, so you're trying to make up for your lack of actually knowing, the creative force behind that.
Yes, I am.
So by just talking about how good the episode was.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if that's acceptable or not, but we'll move on as if it is.
I think I'm going to learn from this and just Google these people from now on.
There you go. That's what I do. I try to find a little bit of information to bring and share with our audience each week. Hey, we've got some exciting news to share with you guys this week in our news segment. So let's play that music and share the exciting news. Boom. All right. So this comes via the Examiner. Actually, who did I get it from? Revolution.
I got it from the Examiner.
They got it from the Examiner, and then they got it from, who was it? TheRoot.com.
Okay.
But according to those sources, Revolution has already been picked up for a second season.
That's 2.
Yeah. So was it last week or the week before that we mentioned it had been picked up for the full first season?
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't remember, but it was either last week or the week before, and so here we are. I haven't seen anything like from NBC on this, and that's why I'm giving the sources, because I want to give them the credit if they're breaking the story, but I haven't seen it from NBC. But if that's true, that's exciting news. Congratulations to the entire creative team, the actors, directors, writers, producers, all the way down to the guys that are holding the microphones, whatever that job is. You guys are doing a great job, and congratulations on getting picked up for season 2. That's awesome news.
Definitely.
So that means we've been renewed for a second season.
It sounds like it.
How do you feel about that?
Obligated.
That's an odd choice.
No, it's great news. I'm excited to hear it. So.
Obligated. Of all the words to choose, joyous, excited, ecstatic, obligated. I feel so obligated. What does that even mean?
I don't know, but that sounded like Neo for some reason.
Great. Now I sound like a terrible actor.
Good job. I don't think that changes who you are, which is a terrible actor.
I might be a terrible actor. Who knows? Jeremy, what other news do we have this week?
Well, we just released episode 6. Its episode name, we believe. I don't know where's the source that you got this.
I got it from one of the Revolution fan sites. I don't remember. I don't remember which one I got it from.
Okay. Well, we know that from what we can tell, it's going to be called Sex and Drugs.
Sex and Drugs. That's October 22nd. Yeah.
Yes.
Next week's is called
Soul Train.
Soul Train. I'm picturing afros, bell bottoms, disco balls.
It's going to have a lot of flashbacks, I bet.
Maybe so.
Maybe it'll be too
We'll see
far.
Miles with some 70s stuff going on.
There you go.
Yeah.
He's probably a kid in the 70s, though, huh?
I don't know how old he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, the Soul Train is next week. That's directed by John Cassar. We're big fans of his. If you're a fan of 24, you might be like Jeremy and you've loved 24 all those years, but didn't realize that John Cassar was the director for most of that. Yeah. So if you love 24, then you should love John Cassar. That's not the only thing that he's done, but that's maybe what he's most known for.
Yes.
What about episode 7?
Episode 7 is called The Children's Crusade, and it airs October 29th.
That's right. And like we mentioned last week, we don't know when or if there will be any breaks. At some point, there will be a break, right? There's 22 episodes that don't run 22 weeks straight, but we don't know exactly what or when those will be. One thing I also forgot to mention, next week in Soul Train, not only do we get John Cassar directing, it's going to be guest starring, I'm so excited about this, Jeff Fahey. He may. We'll have to find out if he's going to look like he just stepped off of a Burt Reynolds movie. But I imagine that he will. Jeff Fahey played Lapidus, Frank Lapidus, the pilot on Lost, who always had his shirt unbuttoned about halfway with all of his chest hair flowing out. Yeah, that's Frank Lapidus, also played by Jeff Fahey. He's going to be on next week's episode.
All right.
I'm excited. So we had Mark Pellegrino last week, playing the evil Jeremy.
So are you saying I'm the good Jeremy?
Well, I was actually implying that all Jeremys are evil.
I didn't catch that.
I see.
I got
you can take it how you want.
Okay.
Yeah. So now we have another Lost vet here next week.
Okay.
I'm excited about that.
Well, speaking of John Cassar and 24, Kim Raver is apparently going to be joining the show as well. She's from Third Watch. I believe the role there is Kim Zambrano.
Okay.
And from 24, she's Audrey Raines. So
very cool. Now, when is she going to be on? Next week or the week after?
I'm unsure when she will be on. According to NBC.com, it's just guess who's coming, and then they have her name. Is she
on their
photos.
cast bios page? So is she going to be a regular?
I tell you the truth, I've not looked. It's just it's a headline on their Revolution page that she's joining. So.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, that's really exciting news. Speaking of exciting news, you guys, the listeners of the Revolution podcast, have made us the top-ranked Revolution podcast in iTunes, and we really appreciate that. When you go to iTunes and search for Revolution podcast, we're the first one that shows up. If you sort it by rankings, we're the top-rated one, and we certainly appreciate all those of you who have left ratings and reviews for us. Again, super thankful for that. Thank you for making us the top-rated Revolution podcast in iTunes. All we do is talk into microphones. It's you guys listening that make that happen. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that. We record our live show every Tuesday, usually at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tonight was a little bit behind. We talked about that. So if you ever want to join us, watch us do the live show, we invite you to come over to goldenspiralmedia.com/live. There's a chat room. We've got folks in there right now interacting with us and interacting with each other. The cameras are on. You can watch us doing the show. We would love to have you guys. Also, Monday nights while Revolution is airing in all continental U.S. time zones, folks are in the chat room discussing the episode together, talking about, what they liked, didn't like, and just various other things of life, getting to know each other. It's a great community we have over here at Golden Spiral Media. We'd love to have you as a part of it. That's every Monday night while Revolution is airing in your time zone in the continental U.S. So come join us over at Golden Spiral Media /live. And before I forget, I want to remind you guys that if you want to submit feedback, like I said, we record the podcast live on Tuesdays. The deadline for submitting feedback for our show is Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can email that into feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com or call us on the voicemail feedback line at 304-837-2278. Any other news, Jeremy?
Nope.
All right, let's play the episode recap. The episode begins with Charlie on the run being pursued by a member of the militia. Miles jumps the man and gets him to tell them that Captain Tom passed through his checkpoint the day before. They take the man's food rations and meet up with Aaron and Maggie in Lowell, Indiana. They encounter a pack of wild dogs. They flee, but one of the dogs catches Aaron and bites him. They find shelter in an old amusement park and bandage Aaron's leg. They have no idea that the dogs belong to a man living at the park, and he is not happy to have intruders. In Philadelphia, Monroe questions Rachel about why Ben knew the power would go out. Rachel insists that she knows nothing, so Monroe calls in Sergeant Strausser to torture her. In flashback, we learn that Maggie was in Seattle talking to her kids back in England when the power went out. She then walked all the way to New York and along the eastern coast looking for a boat to take her home. However, with no boats and no hope of seeing her kids, she decides to end her life by drinking poison. Just before she drinks it, Ben finds her and asks her to join his group. Back in real time, Miles soon realizes that they are being followed by Nate. They take him captive to get info out of him. The man living at the park turns his dogs on them, and they all flee into a diner. Maggie is captured and stabbed in the leg. Captain Tom's team encounters a massive storm. They take shelter in a barn, but a tornado rips through, and Tom is pinned by debris. Danny rescues him, but Tom immediately turns around and binds Danny's hands. At the diner, Aaron works to save Maggie, but Charlie is taken captive by the mystery man. He binds her to a chair and booby-traps an arrow to shoot her if the door is opened. Miles and Nate track the man down and kill him and find Charlie. They regroup with the others, but it is too late for Maggie. She says her goodbyes and dies. In Philadelphia, Monroe pays another visit to Rachel. This time he questions her love for her kids. He says that Danny will be there soon, and he will torture him too. In flashback, we see Rachel leaving Ben and the kids and turning herself into a militia group led by Miles Matheson. Alrighty, there is the episode recap. I gotta say, Jeremy, I liked this episode a whole lot. I can't wait to talk about it. So let's do that. In fact, I liked it so much. I will say, we've only had 4 episodes so far, right? But this is my favorite episode so far. What about you?
Yeah, 25% chance there, huh?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd probably put it in the same spot.
Yeah.
To tell the truth.
Yeah. And in fringe, speaking in fringe terms, and this is a completely different project, completely different set of people that that are behind this, but we've noticed that kind of the fourth episode, of every season is a significant episode, and the show starts to because Fringe kind of reshuffles the deck every season, and so it kind of takes you a few episodes to kind of get into the groove of that. And so that 4th episode is usually when you hit in that groove. And I don't know if that's going to be the same way with Revolution, but man, with this episode for me, it finally felt like some things were clicking and fitting together a little bit more smoothly.
I agree. Yeah, we had a lot of answers given to us, a lot of things shown. So.
We did. Good flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the character development that we had. I liked the pacing of the episode.
Yeah.
All in all, I thought it was the best episode so far. And I hope I get to say that again next week. right? Don't you want every episode to get better?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I mean, we had the good, like I said, the good backstories and and Charlie, this is something I'll say about Charlie. She had a good idea. Miles wanted to, I guess, kill Nate, or I don't know what he exactly wanted to do with Nate. I think he wanted to kill him, right? And she said, no, let's take him captive. Let's use him to get information out of him. So she had a good idea. Even Nora stepped in and said, she's got a good idea here. So here was Charlie thinking on her feet, thinking, tactically, so it was a positive step for her, I thought.
Unfortunately, I don't think it was because she was thinking tactically as much as she was thinking with her interest.
Yeah. So. That might be true, but the reasons that she gave were all good tactical reasons to want to not kill him.
That's true. I'm going to side with Miles on this, and I'm ready for him to go.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree. The pacing was great. The backstories, we really get one major backstory, and that's for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. It frames the entire episode. But I was very glad to see what her character had experienced, and what she had gone through for years, searching just for a boat to get home. I liked their explanations on why the boats were gone. We find out there have been wars.
Yes.
To me, it sounded like there were multiple wars instead of just one great war. It sounded like they've been just constantly fighting. So
it could have. I mean, we mentioned last week the map, and that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that right? You had the
yes.
Georgia Federation. You had the Monroe
Republic, the Plains,
yeah, Texas.
Let's call that Oklahoma.
You had the Plains area,
right?
The Wasteland, and then the California Republic, or whatever it was called. Yeah. So I would imagine there would had to have been some sort of battles to determine what property lines were.
Right. So, and it's interesting.
Line seems not the right word.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
I do find it interesting that the boats have been destroyed, though. We see from that map, it's continental U.S., so what's your Navy doing to get destroyed?
That's right. What's your Navy doing and the other military forces? And not only that, it seems a little bit short-sighted to disassemble all of your large boats.
For wood.
Yeah.
You've got axes and plenty of trees.
Yeah, so that seems a little bit weird, and hopefully we'll get more backstory to figure out why that decision was made, because now you've landlocked yourself.
Right.
And if the other countries haven't landlocked themselves, and they decide to reconquer the world, then they're going to show up with a navy, and you're not going to be able to defend yourself. So it seems a little bit short-sighted. And like I said, hopefully we'll get some backstory there.
Yeah. That kind of makes me wonder, what about nuclear power and those things as well?
That's right.
I haven't even considered that.
They're self-sustaining. That's right. So that's a great question. Yeah, one I've thought of, but we haven't talked at all about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's the thing I'll say, and I said this last week, and I'll continue to say it every week because I believe it 100%. There are things that you can look at and say, like you just said, nuclear. I can't get into this show. It's just not realistic because, of course, nuclear submarines and other nuclear-powered, vessels would continue to work. Well, you assume that they would, but you don't know all the rules yet because they haven't had sufficient time to lay all those rules down. And every week they're giving us more. We had talked about last week even, why didn't she jump on his ship and go across the pond to her kids?
And we find out.
We got that answered this week. The week before we had people who had said, why couldn't you have bullets? Where's all the bullets? Well, we got that answered. Maybe some people still weren't satisfied with that answer, but at least they addressed that. So they're going to be addressing these things.
At this rate, I expect to hear about nuclear subs next week.
I think we are going to get another answer next week, and I'm not going to say what it is because not everyone listens or watches the previews. But if you watch the preview, you know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the major issues that people have been saying, which is kind of on the same level as your nuclear-powered submarine that you just brought up, that looks to me like it will be addressed next week.
All right,
and that's what I'm satisfied with that. They can't answer everything every week. They're answering something every week. If you're looking for the answers, they're there. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah. I'm very happy with the answers so far. We're not really waiting forever to find these answers, these secrets out. So
I mean, it wouldn't make sense on any level for them to answer everything all at once.
Right.
But they're not withholding answers either. So it's great. I love it. Yep. All right. I think we've gotten a little out of order here, but that's fine. I'd rather it kind of come up in natural dialogue here. You've got the next note here. I'll let you take it off there.
Well, the episode starts out with another trap from Charlie.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
I liked it. It worked the first time with Nate where she fell down and he was like, aha. And, he had the higher ground. We talked about that. Do I want to see that to be her only trick? No, but it's a new guy and it works. It worked the first time. Why not use it again? Yeah. So it seemed completely practical to me that she would pull the same trip gag that she foiled Nate with. But like I said, from a viewer standpoint, it would be nice if that's not her first go-to trick or something like that. But it didn't bother me to see it again. Okay. But you?
Well, you kind of sound like a football coach. I mean, if they're going to fall for it, you keep going for it. It'll get you some yards. I think that it was kind of odd seeing it again. I think if we keep seeing it, it is going to bother me. But second time didn't really bother me too much. But it is something that I did notice and made a point to bring up. So
okay. All right, something else that we've seen before that we saw again this week was that somebody else has been identified as an algebra teacher.
Yes.
So this is odd because Grace is, if you're still learning the character names, Grace is played by Maria Howell that we interviewed a few weeks ago, and she had the mysterious computer up in her attic, and she had the amulet, and then she was captured by Randall. Or we assume
she's captured
and not dead.
She better not be dead.
Yeah, I don't think she's. I don't know for sure, but I mean, Maria indicated she'd be back soon, so based on that, I'm assuming that she's still alive. Although it could be a flashback, I suppose. But, my point is that I was trying to get to here. Was it Danny that she told that she was an algebra teacher?
Mm-hmm. No, not Danny.
Or was it Tom?
It was Tom.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I knew it was in that episode. Which was the pilot episode. So she mentioned that she was an algebra teacher, and she's got the pendant. And now this time we see Rachel, and she tells Monroe that Ben was an algebra teacher, and he's got a pendant. So is this like the go-to, alias job profile for all the people who have the pendants, or what's the deal with us seeing that again?
It does sound like a cover to me, a flimsy one.
Yeah,
albeit, we see that Monroe seems to know that he worked for the DOD, the SAE. I mean, he starts naming off initials.
Yes. SAP.
SAP. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a clearance level. Yeah, I want to get to that in just a second. Okay. Yeah, don't let me forget that.
All right.
It's got to be just a cover. I thought she was an algebra teacher. I took it at face value, but now knowing this, I can't believe that either of them were algebra teachers.
I don't think either of them were. They may have been.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have actually worked there as part of the cover, but
it could be they started out that way. They're both highly proficient in math and were recruited for whatever they were working on. Mm-hmm. Assuming TJM in the chat room says that they are an extraordinary league of power-loving algebra teachers. It could be. We're not sure what their affiliation is, what their little club is. I think we'll learn more.
Algebra Teachers of America.
That's right. Power-loving Algebra Teachers of America. There's got to be an anagram there somewhere.
That's PLATA.
PLATA? Yeah. Power-loving Algebra Teachers of America. I like it, PLATA.
All right.
So, we'll find out. It'll be interesting if we see, the third person say, oh, I'm an algebra teacher, see? Yeah.
I'm waiting for the calculus professor. That way they're the leader.
He's the leader. He's the leader of them all.
Yes.
That would be funny. Yeah. All right, since you brought it up, let's talk about what Monroe told Rachel. If he was an algebra teacher, then why did he have DOD clearance and SAP clearance?
Right.
And, I don't have a military background, so I looked those up today. I read an article about him. I mean, DOD clearance, okay. You don't need a military background to know what that is. Department of Defense clearance, okay. But you would think a guy working at the University of Chicago would not have or need DOD clearance. Secondly, SAP clearance, from what I understand, is like a higher level of, because you have like secret, top secret, whatever these other clearance levels are. And then you have clearance within different branches of government. So the DOD, if you have clearance there, doesn't mean you have clearance at some other, unit within the government. But the point remains that you wouldn't think that this type of guy working at the University of Chicago would have that type of clearance, but he did.
Yeah.
So for me, what this tells me is this is that mysterious intrigue that this show is bringing that I personally love. This is why I watch shows like this. Is there's more here than those two little bits of dialogue gave us some really powerful pieces of insight.
Yeah.
Because those are forms of government. Those are divisions or units within divisions of the government. And if Ben was working for them and he knows why the power went out or knew that the power was going to go out, does that implicate the U.S. government in being involved in this worldwide blackout? Or was he working in a group inside the U.S. government that was maybe some sort of rogue faction that did it? I don't think it was by accident, because when he got home, Rachel said, "It's happening, isn't it?"
Yes.
I think they got their expected result, but was the U.S. government behind it, or was there something? You know what I mean? This is the type of thing that I get really excited about,
There's more than meets the eye.
There definitely is.
All right.
So with those two little pieces of dialogue, I mean, my mind's just going, oh, this is rich. This is fantastic.
So do you think the working for the DOD and having the SAP clearance is a cover from a Splinter Cell or something like that? Or do you think, as much as it's a fun conspiracy to say that the government was behind it, I don't know if I'm going to buy into that just yet.
I'm with you, Jeremy. I don't know what advantage would the U.S. government have in creating a worldwide blackout? I mean, because it resulted in the total collapse of the U.S. Of the U.S.
Exactly.
So I can't believe that.
I mean,
that's why I say it has to. Like you called it a splinter cell. That's a great term for it. Now, what their motive was and what they were trying to accomplish in this, obviously, we have no idea at this point. We could speculate, but
well, that's what a podcast is about, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's a rogue unit, a splinter cell within certain levels, and maybe he worked undercover at the University of Chicago with access to this government clearance, and maybe Grace was in another office or another branch of government, and they had these people positioned within certain levels of power and positioned within various government entities so that they could be in control.
Right.
I think that's probably highly likely.
Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder about Rachel, though.
Yeah.
We see her at the scene before she gets tortured. She's sketching in a sketchbook. It looks like it's a power generator.
It does.
It's a picture I think both of us screen capped.
I screen capped it, and I also have, when last we saw Grace, she had some sketches there by her computer, and I have screen caps of those. I'll tell you what, I'll add those to the show notes. I'll add both of those screen caps.
Yeah.
From a layman's point of view, which is I'm clearly am when it comes to science and math, I couldn't find a way to take the objects in their sketches and fit them together in any way or see how they would fit together. But that doesn't mean that they're still not pieces of the same part or the same machine, rather, that do get assembled when when more pieces are present. So. Or they could be completely different. Who knows? But I think two things with the Rachel. I feel like I'm talking too much. I'm sorry. With the Rachel thing, I think it further solidifies that she definitely knew what was going on. We speculated, we thought we heard her say that Daddy is at our work.
Right.
Well, you don't draw things like she was drawing unless you have a highly intelligent mind with machinery and mathematics and stuff like that, and some art skills too. So I think that further identifies her as being in on it, whatever it is.
Yes. I think that's right, and that leads me to, I guess, kind of where I was going. it's kind of interesting that Monroe doesn't seem to take her as a credible threat.
He does. I don't think he realizes that she's in on it.
Yeah. I mean, she's sitting there drawing, and we see him kind of open a book and close it when he's kind of talking to her.
Yeah, it was that was just because she had kind of, like you burn a card into a deck. Right. She had put that journal kind of in the middle. That was just to kind of get a reaction out of her. It was pretty good, I thought.
But I thought it was interesting that, I mean, you see, he's interrogating her about her husband. And I'm sitting here thinking, she's probably the designer of it all.
He's got the answer under his face and doesn't even know it. Yeah.
I'm interested to find out what happens when he finds out.
I'm interested to see. We're just skipping around. This is conversation, which, like I said, I think it's more natural anyway. But I'm interested to see if Miles knows how much she knows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him at the end of the episode with her, so does he know more than Monroe knows?
He might. Maybe that's why he left. But then again, I don't know why he would leave if he did know that. So
yeah.
Let's see. When it comes to that scene at the end, I don't know if you want to talk about that now, but
I brought it up. We might as well.
Okay. It kind of surprised me. I was fully expecting to see either Jeremy or Monroe.
I expected to see Miles. Yeah.
You expected to see Miles?
I'm sorry. I said Miles, but I meant Monroe. I hope I don't start this again tonight, not knowing who I'm talking about.
But I did expect to see something not Miles. So when he steps out of the shadows, it was kind of like, whoa, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Any other thoughts on either of those scenes?
Well, I mean, the intrigue that is added with seeing Miles there at the very end. I mean, at what point he clearly knows that Charlie's mother did not die. I believe he still knows. He knows that she is still in the custody of Monroe.
Yeah.
You think stuff hit the fan last week when she found out that he started the militia?
That's right.
That's not stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff's going to hit the fan when she finds out that he knows that her mother is alive.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. I mean, but I think she's going to have a reason to get angry at Miles at that point.
Oh, sure.
I mean, almost kill him if she doesn't kill him, because that would be, I mean, you think he's on your side. You think he's telling you everything, and
he better have a really compelling story as to why, number one, he took their mother from her, or both of them, and number two, why he left her there in the custody of this ruthless leader.
Yeah. That's
going to be interesting. You know, that might be season finale type of stuff. I think it's that big of a deal, and you know, hopefully not. But at the pace they're going, who knows? You know.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be a really interesting dynamic, and the way it'll probably work. Right, this is the way it always works in television. They did this with Fringe. Peter and Walter, their relationship is getting stronger every week. Stronger. Yeah. It was episode 4 in Fringe where Peter had a turning point. Where he had been wanting to move away and get away from it all. He was done with this. He didn't want to babysit Walter anymore. Episode 4, he had the turning point where he said, this is some weird stuff going on. I'm not going anywhere until I get these answers. But I saw a very similar thing here, right? Miles was like, I'm out of here. By the end of the episode, he's like, I'm staying. So I'm just saying, they also did this thing where Peter and Walter, their relationship keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. But you know that the rug's about to be pulled out from underneath Peter, and boom, it happens. You know, they get that relationship strong, and then, poof, you know. So they'll probably do the same thing here. Miles and Charlie will continue to get better each week, and they'll start to love each other, and then she's gonna find out.
Yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I kind of hope that we don't find out, and maybe her mom dies and nothing happens. So.
Yeah,
but I believe you're right.
Yeah. And Sean in the chat room says that there's obviously a lot of backstory to catch up on. And I agree. And that's another one of these things that I think the show's getting better each week because as you realize just how much there is to this story, it's like an iceberg. There's a whole lot more under the surface than we right. realized at the beginning. It's really getting much more intriguing each week.
It is.
Yeah. So. I have no idea where we're at on the outline by now.
I've been trying to find it, but it looks like the next one we're talking about Charlie.
Little Charlie.
Little Charlie, yes.
Yeah. What'd you think about that?
I think it was her sister. I did not check the cast list.
I did.
Did you?
They did not have the same name.
They did not. Okay. Yeah.
They did a great job casting, didn't they?
It was a very good cast job if it wasn't related at all. So
the eyes were great. She
was
whiny and cry. You should be in that situation.
Yeah.
She was, according to the fan wiki page, she was 11 in that scene. The actress was depicting 11-year-old Charlie.
Okay.
And 8-year-old Danny. Man, you should be whiny and cryy. Is that? I know it's not a word, but it is whiny and cryy. In that situation, your mom's is leaving you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought she did a good job.
I think she did a very good job.
Yeah.
So with her being 11, Danny being 8.
Yeah.
We kind of found out that Danny is 19 in this episode. So is that about 11 years before now?
I don't know that we know concretely now. That number was thrown out, but right. I took it as he looks about 19.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, he's 18, 19. She's 20, 21 from what I can. But I'll be able to pick up.
That's kind of what I'm picking up. So it kind of makes me wonder what happened between then and when they found Maggie.
So that would have been 6 years after the blackout.
Mm-hmm.
9 years, right? It was 15 years, right?
15 years.
Yeah. So 9 years she's been away from them.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been 6 years or was it 4 years? Was Danny 4 when the blackout happened?
I think she was 5.
She was 5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think she was 5.
Okay. I had 4 in my head for Danny.
That's where I got that she's 20 from.
Okay.
So, give or take a year here.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've heard anything that's 100% concrete. Yeah.
So, I did kind of notice in the scenes, some of the flashbacks with Maggie, she mentions they're in Wisconsin.
Yes.
And kind of made me go...
Apparently, at some point, they came a little farther south, back to where they started, or closer to where they started.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting, too. And I missed that the first time, which is not uncommon for me, because we're in the chat room talking while it's airing, so I missed some things.
Right.
But I remember thinking later, how did she get from Buffalo, New York, and she walked along the east coastline looking for a ship, back to Chicago, where she met up with Ben? But she mentions that she wandered and wound up in Wisconsin, like you just pointed out, where she met up with Ben.
Right. So I know it's not very far from Chicago. They could have been up there. But, I mean, we find their home is just kind of in North Chicago. So maybe, 20, 50 miles away, you're in the middle of Wisconsin. So they could have been... I imagine they were probably by a little pond, it looked like, somewhere in Wisconsin. But to me, it felt like they were wandering. They were nomads, too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And maybe because they were trying to keep a low profile.
Yeah.
It may not have been out of a need to go where they could find resources. Mm-hmm. It might have just been keep a low profile, we stay and we move. I don't know.
That's a good suggestion. I kind of got the idea that from the pilot, though, that they had been there in that little village for a while.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
So it appears that maybe 5 or 6 years at the most, which isn't a whole lot of time, really considering. So.
Yeah. What we learned was, though, that in terms of Maggie, that she would walk 500 miles and she would walk 500 more. Clint's not here. Somebody's got to sing.
Is that singing?
It's a poor attempt at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Thanks.
So
try to be more supportive if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
My ego is very fragile. I'm going to cry myself to sleep.
So, we kind of brought up some of Maggie's backstory.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Want to talk about the rest of that?
Yeah.
So. Overall, let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've done all the talking so far, so I'm going to ask you some questions. Let you talk for a while. first question, going into the episode, what was your attachment level to Maggie? Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10. 10, really attached to her. 1, I couldn't give a rip about her.
I'd probably say it was around a 3 or a 4.
Okay.
I liked her. At the beginning, I really liked her, but we've been planning her funeral for a couple of weeks now.
So you had kind of...
So I distanced myself.
Tempered it a little bit? Yeah. I would put mine at about 5 or 6, but for the exact same reasons that you had. Mm-hmm. We both said after the pilot that she was one of our top 4 most intriguing characters.
Yeah. And she's dead.
And for that reason, because I was genuinely intrigued about her character, and I still think, we got her story, but there's still more that we could have learned there. I mean, her journey would have been really fascinating, but...
Did she ever stop believing?
I think she held on to that feeling. Yeah. Wow. But I love the backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked confirming some of the suspicions that were given by our listeners, as well as something we discussed last week about her being across the pond.
Uh-huh. And her kids still being alive.
Yeah.
They were spot on with that. So kudos to the listeners for that.
So
now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm wondering if they are still alive, or if she was right that they probably died a horrible death, young and alone. You just
don't know. I would like to think by the way that they, as she was dying, she was remembering that scene where she was reading The Wizard of Oz to them, and then the way the camera kind of swooped out as if her spirit was departing. That's the way I took that, and I took it as to she was going to be with them again.
Okay.
And maybe they are dead. But we have no way of knowing.
Yeah, that's kind of sad, though.
I'd kind of like. I think there's a lot of joy in her being reunited with her kids again.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna say something crazy, and I know you can just label me the crazy guy with my time travel and all of that. But
all right, my seatbelt's fastened. Yep.
All right.
Let's hear it.
Well, we're kind of sitting there. She's reading this book, and what's the quote that? What's she reading at the very end of her death?
Wizard of Oz.
Right. And she's talking about, or she's reading the part where Dorothy clicks her heels together.
Yeah.
And says there's no place like home and goes home. She wakes up from a dream.
This can't be a dream. This can't be a dream, Jeremy. Do you know how upset I will be if this is a dream?
Probably.
Who dreams about this worldwide power outage? I mean, of course, dreams are crazy. I've had some weird dreams myself, and we all have, but I'd be so dissatisfied if this were a dream.
I don't know if it's necessarily just one person's dream. It's as much as it might be a shared dream.
Like Inception?
Maybe. I might lean that way, yeah.
What about more of a Matrix style?
In what sense?
Where they are in this reality that they think is reality, but they're actually not in that reality.
Okay.
So they're being fed a story.
Yeah. Are they batteries?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. It can't be a straight up ripoff, right?
Yeah.
Although that would still be a pretty strong ripoff. But
so are you telling me you've seen Inception?
I have. I loved it.
All right.
Yes.
One movie.
I just mentioned The Matrix, too.
Oh, okay.
And The Wizard of Oz. That's 3 movies.
Well, you could have read The Wizard of Oz.
Read a book? Are you kidding me?
It's rare.
I am much more likely to watch a movie than read a book.
All right. Well, the chat room is telling me that she is dead and not to go this direction.
Yeah, and they're not in a snow globe. No, Tangier, they're not in a snow
It better not be a snow globe.
Yeah.
But
all right, let me ask you this. Now, you said a 3 or 4 going into the episode as far as your attachment level or your care level about Maggie. What about the end of the episode? Where was it?
With Maggie, I have to say that final scene with her I missed it the first time.
Uh-huh.
I was too busy reading the chat room. And everybody was like, I was counting how many people were, I teared up and whatever. And I watched it when I was watching it for the second time. And I was like, dang.
Yeah.
That was kind of powerful.
When Charlie said... Everybody's leaving me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, dang, somebody's cutting onions in here. Somebody's cutting onions in here.
Yeah.
It was good. So my question is still on the table. But when Maggie was done at the end of the episode, what was your attachment level to her?
I'd probably bring it back up to a 7.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I'm still a little bit higher above you. I'd put it like an 8 or a 9.
I'm still distance from her.
Yeah.
So.
And my point in that, and I think we're both kind of on that same arc. Just one of us was higher than the other. So they did a fantastic job of taking a character that we really had not really a lot of investment in, and by the end of the episode, giving us a great, strong character development, a character story, and we really cared about that character by this time the story was over.
Yeah.
And for that, I say, way to go, Anne. Anne Cofell Saunders is the one that wrote the episode. Just a wonderful job. Wonderful job. And I'm sure the director had a lot to do with that, and just a wonderful job, I thought.
Well, I think one of the things that maybe helped grow your connection with her is, as much as we've been reading her eulogy already,
right?
It was interesting for me to be watching that episode and started second guessing myself. I was like, is this going to be Maggie? Because almost every character at one point was in a position where it could have easily been them.
All right, I'm glad you mentioned that, and we're getting like totally addicted in the chat. And correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but Totally Addicted says that it was predictable, and so Totally Addicted. I'm assuming you're saying that Maggie's death was totally predictable, and in a lot of ways it was. Had we predicted it weeks ago? Yeah. Yes. Is that what happened? Yes. Yeah. But along the way, was there doubt for you that, I might have been wrong on this?
Well, I mean, when they're in the storm shelter, funny scene, good scene.
Yeah.
When I never really guessed that it would be Charlie, but it was kind of like, well, they could screw up, but for obvious reasons, the door opening in would have prevented that from actually firing.
Right.
So, I don't know. A couple of the other characters, I mean, I question whether or not Nora would make it.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what made me just kind of go, whoa. But yeah, I second guessed myself.
I did with that. Tom, and maybe because of Jason, we mentioned Jason almost every week. He's a coworker of ours that's also watching the show. We have some good conversations with him. And he predicted last week, he said, when the trailer said last week, which I know you're not watching the trailers, but the trailer said someone won't make it out alive. And that can always be a total red herring. Like, here's going to be this guest star, right. Boom, they're done. See, not everyone made it out alive.
Yeah.
But I had a feeling it was going to be one of our main cast, and it was. But he predicted that it was going to be Giancarlo's character, Captain Tom.
Really?
He's like, Giancarlo is such a big name. They only brought him in to bring traffic to the show. He signed on for 4 episodes to get the audience invested, and then he's going to move on.
Yeah.
And so, I told him, I'm like, no way. He was one they brought to Comic-Con. He is in on this show.
Yeah.
He's not a 4 and done. But then you get that scene, and I'm like,
yeah,
Jason, if you're right, so help me, And so that might have helped sucker me into that, but I definitely had some doubt that it was not going to be Maggie. Because at that time, they're also stitching up Maggie, and I'm like, maybe she is going to recover from this. So I thought it was good.
I did too. So the whole scene when she's dying as well, I did like how at the very end she says that Charlie and family saved her. I mean, you see that she's grateful for essentially Ben finding her at that pond.
Exactly.
And pulling the knife away from her, essentially. And so she didn't poison herself.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was kind of neat that she was grateful. They were both grateful. And I think that was probably the clearest example of, she's going to die because she's saying her goodbyes.
Right. At that point, it was a done deal. All right, let's talk about one other thing that we'll probably get hate mail on if we don't at least address it, and that is she's got 2 kids that look to be, I'm going to say, 2 and 4.
Yeah.
They're over in England, somewhere in the UK, assuming.
Right.
Since they were all speaking with British accents, including the nanny. And they're late going to bed, but, it sounds like maybe they should have gone to bed an hour ago or something like that.
It was dark in Seattle.
It was dark in Seattle, and I believe Seattle is 8 hours apart from Greenwich Mean Time. So there's an 8 hour difference between the two. It's dark in Seattle on September the 17th, which is when the power went out. We saw that on her phone last week. You pointed out, or 2 weeks ago, that was the date that was on the phone when it came back on, which is cool. That was the premiere date. It gets dark about 7. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think her phone said something like 6:23.
Well, that was when the power went out, but I'm talking about when she was in Seattle. If it gets dark about 7.
Right.
If it's 7 o'clock in Seattle and England is 8 hours ahead of that, we're talking the wee hours of the morning here.
Right.
So there's an inconsistency there. And I know people have brought it up already. Here's my opinion on that. Let it go. They needed to do 2 things. They needed to establish a relationship between her and her kids, motivation for her to want to find them, and they needed to have a visual cue of where she was at, the Space Needle in the background. So clearly she's in Seattle. And they also needed to have a visual cue of when the power went out. That's most easily done if lights go out.
That's right.
So I think they were artistically trying to accomplish some things and without a whole lot of, and as quickly as screen time as possible. Was it inconsistent? Would it have been realistic that the kids were up and she's at that time of day? No, but let it go. Artistically, they needed to accomplish some things, and that they did it that way, and I'm okay with that.
I would agree. It's not that big of a deal. It is kind of one of those things that I'm going to poke fun of and point out.
To me, and I don't mean to bring up Fringe so much, but obviously that's the other podcast that we do. A lot of you folks are also listeners of our Fringe podcast, and they do this thing all the time in Fringe. They did it last week. It's like they click their heels and they're in Boston. Oh wait, 5 minutes later they're in New York. You cannot make it that quickly from Boston to New York. But they do these things so that the story can progress at the rate that they need it to for the time that they have to make the show.
Right.
Let it go. Focus on the story that's being told. It's not possible to physically accomplish that thing. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
I'm off my soapbox now.
All right.
For now. I might get on another one later.
I'm going to go hide it in the corner real quick.
Suspension of disbelief, totally addicted says. Yeah, and to me, that's fine. I can suspend that disbelief in order to buy into the story.
I mean, we're currently suspending power going out. This is
right.
really...
That's right. That's right.
It's iffy.
Okay. So. Let's talk about... Do we talk about the ships already, or do you have more you want to say there as far as the ships go?
No. I mean, we find out that there are no ships. It appears that all of them have been destroyed. I think we've already mentioned that. So it was just kind of a neat thing to have answered. So. Yeah,
they answered about, we talked about all that.
Right.
I don't want to rehash all that. So
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the other thing that 2 boys from Oklahoma will certainly have a lot of experience with, and that is the tornado. So maybe I need to have someone get on a soapbox towards me on this, because it was just not accurate at all.
It left me wanting. I don't know. I had flashbacks of Twister.
Yeah. And like I said, Jeremy and I live in Oklahoma. We probably have more tornadoes per square mile than any state in the United States. We have a tornado shelter in almost every home. We have one here at my house. We're very familiar with tornadoes, how they move and how quickly they stay in one spot and all that stuff. Was it realistic? No, but it created drama. So fine.
A bit of drama.
Yeah.
I was suspending some disbelief here, though, and I kind of made the point, maybe this all happened in a matter of 1 minute to 30 seconds, but we're just getting so much of the rest of the episode that we don't really...
So they broke it out because they were telling this in segments, but really that whole thing happened quickly.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremy, you've talked me down off the ledge.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
So
I'm going to put away my cup of poison now.
All right. You don't have to do that.
That's just hurtful, man.
I'm sorry.
That's just hurtful. I told you my
ego
is fragile. That's right.
Yeah. So I kind of was wondering about that whole tornado scene as well. When it comes to, they were arguing about the storm, and it was something like, we're only an hour away from
Noblesville.
Yeah. An hour away by foot, 10 miles tops for their condition. They didn't look like they were really walking very fast.
Right.
They weren't pushing it. So I'm thinking, at the most 10 miles. And if a tornado happened, it'd probably hit the city if it's headed that direction too. So.
Yeah, it would have. That's what I'm saying. The timing just didn't make sense. But for the sake of drama, you're talking me back on the ledge here, man. What are you doing? You really do want me to drink that cup of poison.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
let's talk about character development that we had in this episode. We already talked about Maggie. Great character development and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we also saw some really interesting character development, in my opinion, between Charlie and Miles.
Yeah.
Miles was ready to leave and abandon her. Can't say I blame him. He seems like a pretty selfish guy. Seems like he's wanting, like, the closer they get to the militia, he's probably just itching to get further from the militia. I don't blame him. I mean, I can understand why he would feel that way, I guess. So I'm sure there was a lot of reasons why he was, wanting to get out of there. But by the end of the episode, they had a bonding moment. We talked a few weeks ago about how it might take the death of someone close to them to really change that dynamic. So based on what we saw in this episode with two things happening. One, Maggie's dead. And she was a lot closer to being family to Charlie than we realized.
Right.
And Miles saw her reaction and embraced her and said, I'm not leaving you.
Right.
What's the dynamic going forward?
Well, I think it kind of goes to where we were earlier in the conversation here. They're gonna go together. I think that he's gonna start forgiving her for some of her selfishness. We're gonna see her start to forgive him for some of the things he's done. I think you're gonna see more of a dynamic to where they grow together, and then maybe one of the reasons he wanted to leave was so he didn't have to be around Charlie when she found out her mother was alive. So
that very well could be, and Nora also added to that that change of heart where she said, you're being too hard on Charlie.
Yeah.
I also liked where Charlie stood up to him, and of course she said it under her breath, but still it was she was getting a little bit tired of him too.
Yeah.
She's not the only one that's been annoying and that has been at fault here with this.
Yeah.
And so I liked that some of these things came to the surface now and these conversations took place. And that to me is really good character development. What I mean by development is that it is in a transitionary period. And this was definitely a transition in the relationship that we saw this week. We'll know in a couple more weeks on what the long-term effects of that will be. But I'm glass half full type of guy. I think it's going to be very positive.
Yeah.
I think, and we're also getting close to, I don't know where they're at in the production when the pilot aired, but it takes a while to get the fan reaction, fan feedback incorporated into the show. And I already mentioned that I always feel like 4 episodes, you got to give a show 4 episodes because then the show kind of starts to get into its groove a little bit. But also that 6th episode, 7th episode, around there should be when they start making some tweaks based on fan reactions. And so,
And from some of our conversations with Grace, I forgot her real name now. Maria. We she was talking about filming episode 7 when we interviewed her.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think we'll see that maybe within episode 6 or 7. We'll see some of those changes or anything like that.
And I already think the show's getting better. I mentioned this was my favorite episode so far. I have high hopes that it's going to continue. I mentioned the intrigue with the U.S. government and all that stuff. To me, it's just this was so good in so many levels of what I look for in a great show.
Yeah. So I am hoping that with the Maggie dying, I hope I'm right about that Charlie growing up bit. So we'll see.
I do too. All right, so now Aaron is the only person in their little happy group of vagabonds that knows about the amulet.
Yes.
Is he going to keep that to himself? He told Maggie they needed to keep it to himself.
Yeah. I kind of wonder when he's going to tell. I know he's going to tell somebody.
Yeah.
I think it's going to eat at him kind of like it did with Maggie. I think he's going to have to confess it to somebody. He doesn't seem like the guy that really wants to keep the secret.
Okay.
So to me, it's more or less a question of when is he going to tell Charlie or when is he going to tell Miles?
Yeah.
I bet he's probably going to make the mistake to tell Miles.
Yeah.
I don't think that he'll tell Charlie for some reason. I mean, yeah, her dad didn't trust her with it because he didn't give it to her. He didn't tell her about it, and so he'll think, his brother's okay, even knowing that his brother started the war. So I'm kind of thinking.
So Miles finds out. Does Miles get his hands on it and then turn that over to Monroe?
He might.
Uh-huh.
It might be a part of that cliffhanger at the end with the mom. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think Miles is going to be good all season.
Do you think maybe they'll trade the amulet for the mom? Use it as some sort of bartering?
That's a possibility. I don't think that'll work.
I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
I mean,
just coming to me right now.
Yeah. So I think here's the amulet. Okay, well, bang, bang, bang. I mean, we see them do that already. So
okay,
what's going to prevent them from killing them?
Yeah, I definitely think Aaron's going to tell somebody.
Yeah.
And it's going to lead to trouble. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. Speaking of trouble, I'm pretty sure your Rachel being Darth Vader theory is in trouble.
Well,
what say you?
It's looking rough.
Okay.
So I don't think it was right when I said Darth Vader.
Uh-huh.
I did get the alive part bit.
You sure did. I'll give you credit for that.
I still want to say she's going to have been evil at one point. And, I mean, Monroe asks that question. What kind of mother are you?
Right.
It offends her. But, yeah, it takes somebody either very strong or very morally corrupt to
or in a very
like
dire situation.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you leave your kids like that?
So we have a lot of speculation.
Yep.
We know that it broke her heart because when we see it from her perspective as she's walking away, we see her kind of tear up and fight back that
right
that fear or that whatever that she's experienced.
Heartbreak. Yeah.
So I mean, she is torn up by leaving her family, but at the same time, I'm still holding on that she's got to be evil.
So you're not letting it die yet?
I'm not letting it die yet. So.
Good for you. You shouldn't. Stick with it. I'm serious.
Yeah. Despite the obvious.
Stick with it until it is absolutely proven that it could not be true. And that may not come until season 7 or whatever. Stick with it.
I might. So for now, I'm definitely going to.
It's a terrible theory. Terrible.
Yeah. I'm just kidding, but I'm going to stick with it.
All right. One thing we didn't talk about when we were talking about the whole Miles thing.
Yeah.
When he was talking, and I mean, Miles knowing that Rachel's alive, was that he told Nora that it's not his fault that their mom's dead. Well, it's his fault that they still think that their mom is dead.
Exactly.
And I'm sure Nora doesn't know the truth either. Otherwise, she would have said, actually, not so fast. So it's just, he's just trying to weasel out of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I find it very annoying. I find it very irresponsible. It sounds terrible because he's trying to get out of responsibility, but you know what I mean? This guy needs to grow up a little bit, take responsibility, be a leader, be a man, answer for his mistakes and what he started. He needs to man up here, not quit trying to run away from his problems.
I think we are going to see him run for a while. He kind of reminds me of Han Solo in that aspect.
Okay. Han Solo was running?
From his internal fears. I mean, we kind of see him maybe running from the Empire and dropping his cargo or something, so.
I thought you were going to give me a Jabba the Hutt impersonation. I'm really disappointed.
No, I can't do Jabba.
Oh.
Can't really do many impersonations.
That was the only purpose for me mentioning that was so you would give us
no impersonations.
Dang it.
So,
all right.
You might loosen me up in a few years.
We'll get you there.
No, I think we'll see that, and now I've lost my train of thought. So it does make me wonder, though. Does he know that Rachel's alive now?
I'm going to assume that he does.
Okay.
He was he was the second in command. He took her into custody. I don't see why he wouldn't know that she was, it's possible that he thought she was dead.
Yeah.
Something happened, then whatever. She doesn't seem to be, there's no obvious physical ailments that she has, no scars. So in other words, let's say she was shot, or she could have been shot somewhere that's being closed over, or it's an explosion or something like that. There's no obvious evidence that she has gone through some sort of trauma or something like that. What are you showing? You're showing me a picture.
I'm handing you a picture of when she's got the book. What's on her hand? Does it look like a glove?
No, not to me. It just looks like, the lighting that's being used.
I'm thinking it's a glove.
Because her thumb to me looks like it's skin folds.
Okay.
And I feel like I can see a fingernail there on her thumb.
Well, bummer. I was gonna say that she lost her hand and she's an android.
She's got a steampunk hand. Yes. That would be fantastic.
So, no, but I mean, she could have. To me, it looks like a glove. Maybe she was disfigured there. But that's just my mind looking for something in that image that I handed you. So,
okay. Do you think that Ben knows the truth of why she was going to Miles, or did he even know that she was truly going to Miles?
I don't think he knew. I think that he thought she was going for supplies. She just never returned. He assumed she was dead.
I disagree.
Really?
I do. I think that he knew that she was going to Miles, and he told the kids that she was dead.
Yeah.
It was easier for them that way.
Yeah.
The reason I paused was because if she went to Miles and he knew it, then why would he send his daughter to Miles? That's something that I'm not. Unless he knew that Miles had left the militia and was opposed to the militia now. I mean, there's some backstory there we got to get filled in.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what made him think Miles was separated. So he probably did know Miles was away from the militia. But
yeah, I would think so.
I don't know if he knew where she was going. It would be an interesting ploy to send her in as a victim.
Uh-huh.
And she's actually there to mislead them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Why her? If Miles, if Monroe doesn't seem to know that she knows things like we already talked about,
right.
What's her value?
Right.
So why was she giving herself over to them, and why what set that up?
Well, I had suspected it was a love story or of some sort, but he arrests her at the end, and that kind of shot that out the window. I was like, well,
some people like that.
It's true.
I don't think that's what was going on, though.
Neither do I.
Do you think that they did have some sort of love relationship at some point down the road? Maybe after?
That it's a distinct possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Something still has to distance her from her husband.
Yeah.
So
you still feel like we've got some feedback that's asking us that very thing. So we'll hang off for that conversation.
Right. So.
Okay. Any other notes you want to talk about here? Any other topics?
I think that's the end for my notes.
Yeah, I think that's all mine too. Some really good stuff in this episode. As I've said, in my opinion, great character development, new levels of intrigue. The two parties are converging closer together. They're now a day or less away from Tom and Danny.
Mm-hmm.
So last week we had an A, B, and a C storyline. Now we've already got just an A and a B storyline because the group met up at Lowell, Indiana, like they said they were going to do. So to me, it's just getting better and better, more of what I was hoping to see every week. And hopefully that'll continue. We'll find out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into the quote of the week. Okay, last week's winner, and this was close,
All right.
More and more folks are going over to goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution and participating in the quote of the week poll every week. And the poll is up right now. You can go, if you're joining us for the live show or you're listening to this, it's up right now over at goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. Click on the polls. You'll see the quote of the week for the Plague Dogs. And so we're getting more and more folks voting. This one was very close this week, but the winner was, this is Miles Matheson.
You know this guy?
Oh, you really don't know, do you?
How do you know him?
Well, they're gonna find out sooner or later. Go ahead. Tell them. This is Miles Matheson, commanding general of the Monroe Militia. Damn founding father of the Republic, second only to Sebastian Monroe himself. You taught me everything I know.
All right. That's the winner from last week. Thanks to everybody that voted. We sure appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoy that little part of our podcast. And so we've got 4 new quotes for you this week. The first one is "Better man than I."
I'm not really so different than your father. I just want a future for my child.
Well, my dad didn't murder people. He didn't hurt people like it was nothing.
You don't remember the days after the blackout? No food, no water, nothing but panic and death everywhere you turned. Now, if your daddy could go through all that and hold on to that kind of mercy, then my hat is off to him. He was a better man than I.
All right. Quote number 2. Don't go.
I need your help. You listen to your dad. Protect your brother. Promise? I love you. I love you too.
Mom, please! Mom! Don't go! Mom, please! Please! Don't go.
Good scene. Good child acting. Clint's always harping on the child acting on an episode. I wonder what his thoughts were on this. All right, the next one is, I don't even know Charlie.
You should go easier on her.
I'm gonna go a whole lot easier on her. I'm gonna leave.
Excuse me?
It is better for everybody if I leave.
Better for them? It's better for you.
This is not about us. Don't start talking like it is, okay?
You're right. It's about Charlie. And you made her a promise.
I don't need any of this.
She's your family.
Doesn't make her my responsibility. I have no idea why I signed on for this in the first place. It's not my fault that her dad's dead. Not my fault what happened to her mom. I don't even know Charlie.
Actually, Miles, it is your fault. What happened to her mom? You were there.
I thought busted.
Yeah.
At the end of that scene. That's all I have.
And the final quote is, "I owe you nothing."
What stories does that guy know about you? He looked like he was about to wet himself.
Come on, I told you it was none of your business, all right?
Look, and normally I'd agree, except every person that we meet wants to capture you, kill us for knowing you, or they're flat out terrified of you.
Listen, Charlie.
We are so close to catching up to Danny by what, tomorrow? And I don't even know who I'm walking with or what I'm walking into.
Damn it, Charlie, shut up! Let it go. I don't owe you an explanation. I owe you nothing. All right? You want your brother back? Drop it. I swear to you, I'm out of here. You can find him yourself.
All right, so those are the quotes. They're up right now, as I mentioned, over at goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. Interesting here, we have a couple of folks that pointed out and that are in the live show that he said, quote, "What happened to her mom?" He didn't say anything about her mom being dead.
Right.
He knows that she's still alive.
Okay.
I agree. I think he knows.
I'm surprised not to see the death sequence with Maggie in here. Everybody leaves me.
Oh, you know what? I tried that scene. It was too. You know, some of these are long as it is, but I don't want them to ever go over a minute. And there were 2 scenes that I just couldn't get whittled down to under a minute. So that one didn't make the cut just for that reason. But it was good. All right, we got lots of great feedback this week, so let's get into that. righty. Man, like I said, we got some really great feedback, quite a bit of it this week. Thank you to everybody who sent in feedback for the Revolution podcast. We really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to interact with you guys and hear what you guys are thinking about the show, good, bad, or otherwise. And we've got a little bit of all that for you today. We're going to get it started with John.
Hey guys, this is John from Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh more specifically, calling for the Revolution podcast. I got a theory, and let's see how it goes. Within the past several years, they've been talking about the Earth's magnetic field and how over the eons it's shifted. It's reversed polarity a couple times. So I'm wondering if maybe this thing that in the pilot episode when she says, you know, it's happening, isn't it? I think it might be that the Earth's magnetic field is shifting or switching. And as we all know, all the generators and everything work on magnetic fields. It could be that with the shift in the Earth's magnetic field, everything magnetic quits working. So it may not really be electric things that aren't working. It could just be magnetic things don't work. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it. And just to talk about what to call the Revolution fans, I think revolutionaries would be pretty good. Anyway, thanks.
All right. I like revolutionaries too.
Yep.
I think it was John. I was trying to find it here on my phone. We got another one that came in late. It was actually while I was over waiting to get into parent-teacher conferences, and I think it was John. Forgive me if it wasn't, and forgive me if we end up playing it here in just a minute. But he added to that we haven't seen a compass used yet.
That's true.
So if it does boil back to magnetism throwing everything off, then that would explain why no one's using a compass. Is that what I said a minute ago? Is compass?
Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, my mind's so scrambled right now. So I think it's a good theory. It's as good as anything else.
Yes.
And who knows?
And it could explain why you would need clearance. Maybe the government doesn't want people to panic. And so I think that it's pretty neat, pretty good idea.
Yeah, I like it. Thanks, John, for sending that in. And at this point, we don't know. And so, yeah, it's like I said, it's as good as anything else we've heard. And I think better than a lot of what we've heard.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's listen to what Comey has to say.
Hey guys, this is Comey from Savannah, Georgia, calling about Revolution. This is the best episode of the series so far. At least I thought so. I thought all the acting was good. The directing was good, the music was good, and when Maggie died, that was a very sad and touching scene, but I thought the actress did a good job, especially, and also the actress for Charlie, I thought she did a good job as well. Speaking of Charlie, this is the first episode where I actually like that character. I think this is the episode that will make her more endearing to me, and I hope to all the other fans as well. I would have liked to have gotten more information on the backstory of the blackout, but I know that cannot take over every single episode. We need to have more things than just the blackout storyline. As it goes with Maggie, once she had that background flashback, we got to see some more of where she's coming from, some more images of her kids and her backstory. I knew from that very moment that she was going to die. Every time a side character gets a backstory episode, 90% of the time, they are going to die. And this is Maggie's turn to die. Sad. I think she was a wonderful character. I'd like to see her develop more, but I guess you can't have a show with too many cast members. If not, it'll just become too problematic to write a story. Miles seems to be a very, very interesting character. We get more information about him, about the militia, which is good. But I'm very confused. I don't understand how the militia could have risen to prominence so effectively, especially right after the blackout, considering that Miles and Sebastian's training of military strategy would be so dependent on electronics and digital warfare. I just don't understand how they could put together an effective military that would be able to control such a large segment of the continental United States. Either way, excellent episode. My favorite one so far. I give this one a 9 out of 10. I'm looking forward to more episodes like this and hope to keep up the momentum. This is a good show, good concept, and I thought this was the best executed episode of the series. Another thing I saw and I noticed and I liked is that there seemed to be toning down the polish of the show. The characters looked a little bit more gritty in this episode, and the settings looked a little bit more gritty as well, which I thought was welcome. It makes the show less distracting when it looks like it's actually a post-apocalyptic setting. All right, guys, take care. Excellent podcast. Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Kome, for that. What do you think?
Well, the first thing that went to my mind when he was talking about Maggie is something we didn't mention, and her dress was red. So was that a red shirt?
It was in the flashback you're talking about. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. That's good.
So, no, he's got some great insight.
Yeah, sounds like he liked it as well, just like we did. Thought it was best yet.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote something down, though. Was that what you wrote down?
I just didn't want to forget that.
Oh, okay, yeah. Gosh, he said something else, though, that I was going to respond to. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. My apologies, Kome. I should have written it down like Jeremy did so that I wouldn't forget. Now I have my pencil, so I won't let that happen again.
All right.
And it's really bugging me. Anyway, thank you, Kome, for sending that in. All right, let's read some of the ones that we got in this week. Would you like to go first, or shall I go first?
I'll start.
Okay.
So, the first one we get is from Greg. Hey, Golden Spiral guys. I'm a huge fan of all your podcasts, and when I found out you were doing a Revolution podcast, I was thrilled. Your podcast is great, but the show is leaving something to be desired. I'm sticking with it, and I think it is getting better with each episode. But there was one huge problem I had with tonight's episode. The crossbow trap would not work as shown. The door opened into the room Charlie was being held in. If the door opened into the room, then the line attached to the crossbow would become slack, not tight. The door would have to open away from the room for the rope to tighten and fire the crossbow. Oh well, who cares about the details? That seems to be a common theme with this show. Anyway, keep up the great work with the podcast. You make this show worth watching just so I can listen to your show. Greg.
That's a very nice compliment there.
Thank you, Greg. And I like that he pointed that out. It's something that I kind of briefly mentioned earlier.
You did.
So, again, it's nice to have somebody else notice those things.
Yeah.
It was kind of bugging me. I was kind of wondering how that was going to work, but
I'll say this. I saw this email come in, and I think I was still during my second rewatch when this came in.
Okay.
So I paid attention to that scene. And the way that it was tied to the door is the string was going, it wasn't going straight out from the door.
Right.
So that if it opened, it would get slack. It really went beside the door, straight off the side of the door handle.
Okay.
So if it's pulling from the side and the door handle opens, then it will pull that string tight.
Okay.
But I definitely am still with him on that, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things when I was watching the show that I kind of helped justify it is it looks like he's making not really a pulley system, but he is using objects to help keep it taut.
Yeah.
And to maybe help the orientation of a door opening actually pull the trigger. But I still was not sure that really would work. I did not notice that it was off to the side, though.
It's definitely off to the side, but I wouldn't have noticed it had Greg not sent that in, and I took a closer look at it.
Okay.
All right, this one comes in from Andrew in Montreal. He says, hello, D and J. So poor Maggie, she's British, not Australian, which I think we got that confirmed. And Miles had mentioned a couple weeks ago that he wanted to bang the British chick, I think were his exact words. Anyway, Andrew says, so poor Maggie was only on the show to be killed, just to make Miles man up. Ugh. The death wish in every action film trope, school of writing. Okay, I'm bitter. Killing the foreigner doesn't go down well, especially for an ex-Brit like me. Cheers, Andrew from Montreal. Somebody's got to be Boone, somebody's got to be the first to go.
Them's the breaks.
It is. We're disappointed too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truly.
That does remind me of what I was going to say with Kome, and that was, you get the person's flashback and then you know that they're going to die.
Right.
And that's certainly the way Lost worked. A couple folks in the chat room mentioned Nikki and Paolo. What jarred my memory is because I couldn't stand Shannon And then we got a couple of flashbacks with her, but we finally got a flashback that I finally cared for. I was like, oh, this character's not as bad as I thought. And then she's dead. So yeah, that's the way flashbacks work. They try to resolve the character so they can die in peace.
And if you've not lost watch, you can file complaints with.
You just said if you've not lost watch.
Can you edit that? No.
If you haven't,
you know what I meant.
If you haven't watched Lost,
right?
Is that what you're trying to say? All right, I'm with you.
I try to slam you, and
that's right.
Do it to myself.
You're like the guy that tries to dunk and hits it off the front of the rim.
Just call me Westbrook.
All right.
If he's a listener, we really love you.
Yeah, we do actually. Give us some tickets.
All right. The next one is from Sonia. She says, "Hi, Daryl and Jeremy. Just wanted to drop a quick line and say how much I am enjoying the podcast. Longtime listener of the Fringe podcast and all the other Golden Spiral Media podcasts. I love them all.
Thank you.
A quick observation about the latest episode of Revolution, Plague Dogs. I have been working as a veterinary technician for the past 17 years, and I noticed something that maybe others didn't. One of the dogs that chased our characters was the Doberman Pinscher. These dogs have a certain characteristic to their ears to obtain their look that is achieved by way of a surgical procedure. Although in recent years the practice has become outlawed and banned in many countries because it is rather unpleasant to the dogs, to say the least, many veterinarians will still perform this surgery in the U.S. Most people would not recognize the breed without this characteristic, or would think that the dog may be a Doberman mix, or just another breed. The ethics of the surgery is neither here nor there, but I just wanted to point out that if it has been 15 years since the blackout, there would be no way for this dog to realistically have undergone surgery. Nitpicky? Perhaps. But as the science and technology can sometimes go over my head, I thought I would weigh in on something I knew. Also, you know what this show needs? It needs a walkabout episode. I am really enjoying the show, don't get me wrong. Post-apocalyptic subject matter has always been fascinating to me, and I love the premise of the show. We just need an episode like Walkabout to seal the deal. Thanks to you both for another great podcast, and a big welcome to Jeremy. Sonia. Thank you, Sonia.
You haven't seen Lost. Have you seen any of Lost?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when she says walkabout, you know what she means?
I believe I do.
Oh, boy.
So.
You either know walkabout or you don't, my friend. Walkabout is the episode that made me fall out of my chair and fall in love with Lost.
Okay.
It actually, that's interesting. It aired 2004, so 8 years ago this week.
Really?
Because it aired, I think, on my son's birthday. Either that or a day within. We were in the hospital. My son's birthday is this Saturday, and that's how I know that. And so we missed the episode. I didn't get to see it for a couple of weeks, and when I did finally see it, it was like, yeah. So, and in some ways, this episode was like that. Not nearly the impact for me, but when you see that Miles knows Rachel is alive, and you get the tidbits like I mentioned about Ben having DOD and SAP clearance, to me, those were some really powerful things that really added a bunch of oomph to this show. But was it walkabout? No, but nothing. I don't think anything's ever going to be a walkabout for me, because that is one of my top 3 episodes of anything I've ever seen. Probably the number 1. So that's kind of where I'm at with Walkabout. Okay. Do you have any comments on that?
What episode was Walkabout?
Episode 4.
All right. Of season 1. There you go.
And like I said, episode 4.
There you go.
It's
that's why I bring
episode.
That up.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anywho.
All right. This next one comes in from Matthew, a.k.a. the Unibeefer. And he says, hey, just a quick theory, nothing special. I'm beginning to think that maybe not Nate is actually Captain Tom Neville's son. It would fit into the whole family element, and I'd actually be surprised if I'm wrong. Anyways, last night's episode was the best so far in my opinion. That's all, Matthew. What do you think about this?
I disagree.
Okay.
I'm not trying to make any points, but he's been the kid for that family for at least 15 years. And Tom isn't exactly the same ethnicity as Danny. So I don't want to say that they're related. I mean, It's not going to make it impossible, of course, but I mean, we've seen. Wait. I'm so wrong. Nate. I'm thinking Danny.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, I read that wrong.
Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. Oh, you read it wrong. You didn't get the characters confused. You read it wrong.
Right.
Okay.
So, well, just
Nate.
scratch that. So, it's a possibility. Okay. I think that's actually a great idea.
That's hilarious.
And now I'm really intrigued by that. I'm sorry for just totally blowing that, but yeah. It's good.
You were distracted by his name. You see beef in there, and you're like, I could go for a hamburger right now.
Well, it just kind of made me think bacon, really. So.
I'll say this about it. I like it from this perspective. Nate doesn't seem committed to the militia. And this is a conversation I think I had with Jason earlier today, and I think we also had it last week or the week before. Maybe after the pilot when we saw it, even then, he seemed to have, he saved Charlie from one of the militia members. He's fairly young. He's around Charlie's age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would have been, when the blackout went out or happened, he wouldn't have had any type of, I don't even know the right word. Here's what I'm trying to get to. I'll just get to it. I think that he might be in the militia because he has a parent or parents or dad in the militia.
Mm-hmm.
He was raised up in it.
Right.
And because he was raised up in it, he didn't choose to join it.
Right.
And therefore his allegiance may not be as strong.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be why we've seen him go both ways. And so if Tom's in the militia and it is his father, then he would have been raised up in it more than likely. And that could explain it. So I think it's got some possibility. But I'm going to say no.
Really?
I am.
All right.
Sorry, Matthew.
I'm going to say
right?
I like it.
All right.
So
Going to put some bananas on that?
Hi, Daryl and Jeremy.
You're skipping the banana bit. All right. You go ahead to the next one.
All right. The next one comes in from Dave from Nova Scotia, Canada. Hi, Daryl and Jeremy. Just thought I'd send you a few comments on the overall Revolution series. I have to say that I'm very disappointed in the series and for the first episodes. I couldn't put my finger on why. I don't think my expectations were too high. I certainly didn't expect another Fringe. After last night's episode, I think I've come to the conclusion on why I feel this way. To me, it appears that they have dumbed down the show for the mass market. Shows like Lost and Fringe had such a devoted audience because they challenged you and made you think. The plot of Revolution so far has been predictable and the characters one-dimensional. One of the only interesting characters, Maggie, has been killed off, and the only other characters...
Whoa, spoiler alert. Sorry.
Like you said before, if you're listening to this podcast and you did not watch this episode.
I think we might have spoiled that already. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I'll keep my mouth shut.
I'm just going to pick back up. She's been killed off, and the only other characters that create any interest are Danny and maybe Grace. Charlie will always be the most annoying character on TV today. Miles goes from being cold-blooded killer to military commander to an emotional mess as soon as any of the women speak to him. Aaron and Nora appear to be there just to occupy space. And what about the power going out? It was barely mentioned in last night's show. I had hopes this would be a show with some mystery and mythology that would keep our interest for a few seasons. Unfortunately, it isn't there. On the Bunsen burner scale, Fringe has always been between 8 and 10. Revolution barely makes it 2. I've started watching another show, Last Resort. After a couple episodes, it appears to have some potential. I'll be keeping an eye on your website for new products. Keep up the good work. You all do a great job. Dave from Nova Scotia, Canada.
So Dave is done with the Revolution.
We'll be sad to see you go.
Yeah, and I might shoot him another email. I know Dave, and he and I are Facebook friends too, and just to get more of a take after he listens to the podcast, because sometimes we'll say things in a podcast and people will go, that's why I listen to you guys. I didn't catch that, and so maybe some of the things that we've talked about today, he'll have that reaction to, because I love this episode. Yeah. I thought it really took the show to the next level. But having said that, Revolution isn't a show for everybody.
Yeah.
Fringe isn't a show for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Lost isn't a show for everybody, you know. So if you've watched it and said, you know what, thanks but no thanks, okay. You know, I'm not going to try to talk you into loving a show just so you'll listen to our podcast. You know, that's not...
No shameless plugs?
No, I mean, you either like the show or you don't, and not everyone's going to like every show. I wish that you did like the show.
Right.
Give us more people to interact with and talk with.
Right.
I've heard good things about Last Resort, though.
I'm not gonna bother.
Okay.
I know that power going out is implausible, but subturning on the U.S. just kind of... I'm a little patriotic, and it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. So.
I can get that. Oh. So, but either way, Dave, we appreciate you sending that in, and we appreciate you listening, and you know, maybe hopefully you'll give the podcast a listen. Hopefully it'll help, but if not, no problem. And thanks for listening to the other stuff that we do. I hope you enjoy Last Resort, you traitor. No, I'm just kidding. Probably. All right, let's move on here. We have one more to read, and then we'll listen to a couple more. You stuck me with the long one, you dirty dog, you.
I saw it coming.
You plague dog.
I actually copy-pasted it so you get it.
All right. Well, this comes in from Jim, and he says, hi, Daryl and Jeremy. First off, I'd like to agree with Stephen King's thoughts from last week about the light on the globe. It certainly looks like it's originating in Hawaii. But then again, this is a J.J. Abrams show. Perhaps there's another island in the Pacific with a glowing light at its core. Just saying. Anyway, I just finished watching Revolution for the second time tonight, and I have to admit that I'm not sure what to think about it. Miles finally said the words many fans wanted to hear when he told Charlie to shut up, though I thought Tracy Spiridakos did a much better job this episode. As many expected, poor Maggie was killed off, but I was disappointed in the fact that she died by the hand of some no-name psycho Carney. Main character deaths are supposed to mean something, not just happen out of the blue. I suppose it speaks to how unpredictable their world really is, though I guess it did serve as motivation for Miles to not leave the group and stay with his family, so there is that. However sudden her death was, the scenes of her remembering her children helped bring gravity to the situation. And though Maggie wasn't my favorite character, the thought of her being left there in some amusement park diner after all she'd been through really made me feel bad for her. On the plus side, however, her flashbacks did give us more clues. It appears that the steamboats and tall ships are still around, but most were either destroyed in the war, ripped apart for lumber, or the militia has them. At least we know that steam power still works, even though we haven't seen it yet. I thought Danny and Captain Neville were going to have a longer conversation in the storm cellar, but we only got a few bits of info before the ceiling fell in. The more I see this situation, the more I see Neville helping Danny out of... the more I see this situation, the more I see Neville helping Danny out when they get to Monroe and the torture starts. They're starting to bond a little, and even though Neville still sees him as a prisoner, I'm guessing that'll change by the time they get to Monroe. I also think one of the bad guys will need to change sides before the season's over. At least that's usually what happens on shows like this. So what did Rachel have in that sketchbook of hers? Looked like plans for a pretty big generator, if you ask me. It also sort of looked like one of the pendants in the center of it, perhaps as a power source. Why did she turn herself into Miles? Was she going after Ben himself? Or was he going after Ben himself? And that's why they hadn't seen each other in years? Did Rachel surrender to save her family? I can't wait to see what happens to force Miles out of the militia and Rachel into seclusion as Monroe's prisoner. I'm also wondering what the torture guy did to Rachel. They only showed her from the neck up or from the back in her last scene. You never saw her hands either. Overall, I like how the pieces of the puzzle are fitting together as the show goes on. While this episode didn't move the plot forward much, we did get some interesting and important information from the flashbacks. I know I'm looking forward. He says, I know I'm looking forward to next week. After watching the preview, I can't wait for... Well, I better not say. I don't want to spoil Jeremy. From the corner of Shut Up and Stay Here, Jim in Wisconsin.
Thanks for the no spoilers.
Yeah. Good stuff from Jim. A lot of different content there. Mm-hmm. We didn't really talk about the last week we had a lot of conversation about Tom and Danny, and was Danny kind of going to go over to the dark side, if we want to continue with the Star Wars analogy. And I said I hoped not, but I felt like they were wanting us to feel that way, and that I hoped that if he did, it was only so that he could take them out from the inside out. Mm-hmm. After this episode, I've got to say, no way he's going to go to them unless it's to take them in from the inside out. I don't think he'll be swayed by Tom to join their ranks.
I agree, and I like his feedback here with maybe Tom siding with him.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that will happen, but I think that's a great idea. I think that's a neat way to go.
Boy, wouldn't that be a great ally if Tom changed sides?
Yeah. Well, he's got a great gun too, so he can
he does. Yeah.
Fix all the problems pretty quickly, but I think Tom might come around in the end, but I don't know if he's going to come around quickly, if at all. So,
okay.
I do at the beginning. He talks about the originating in Hawaii from the globe that we talked about last week.
Right.
I took a look at that. I'm pretty convinced it's Hawaii as well.
I know it looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was shocked when I first saw it.
It's pretty impressive there.
Yeah.
When he talks about, talking about the sketchbook, he mentions we never saw her hand, and I had a picture. I thought it was a glove. You thought it was her hand.
But that was before the torturer came in.
She's been there 15 years, and I think from the way I understood it, he was implying that she's been hurt over the years. So.
She's been there 9 years.
Right, 9. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Just trying to make sure.
My ego's fragile too, and I've already damaged it so much tonight. So
fine. I'm sorry.
No, anywho, she's been there for so many years, and I think this isn't the first time she's been tortured. I mean, we see her just put her hands behind her back.
She knows the position.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Anywho, I thought that. I don't know. I think he's got some great points here.
Yeah.
I'd like to post that picture. Maybe he can take a look at the hand there as well for us, and.
I will. I'll put that in the show notes. This is episode 7, and I'll have that picture which has her notes, and also the one that we saw Grace have a couple of weeks ago. I'll have both of those in the blog post for this. Don't go to the blogs area. Go to the podcasts area. This is episode 7 of the Revolution podcast. You can find that over at goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. All right. We have 2 more feedbacks to listen to here. This one comes in from Maureen.
Hey guys, this is Maureen Paulini from San Diego calling about last night's Revolution episode. First off, I wanted to say, woohoo, there's 7 people in the West Coast chat room now, so we're growing by leaps and bounds. The second on my list of points is the militia. I'm wondering if anyone else wishes that the writers would give greater depth of character to the militia members. They all seem like they're really black and white characters, very Snidely Whiplash. I expect them all to be going around saying "mwahaha" and twirling their mustaches. I'd like to see a little more subtlety in their characterizations. Miles is the only one that's shown any subtlety that way. The rest of them just are mean, evil people. And I can't believe that everyone who's in the militia is that way. And I think there's got to be more reason than, everything was going terribly and we needed to impose order from the outside. Because now 15 years later, there are people still involved. And I'd like to see, a little conflicted feelings about how terrible they are, other than all these people who seem to really relish hurting people and doing evil things. The other thing is, number 3 on my list, Miles is an algebra teacher. Isn't that what Grace said that she was when she was asked? And so is algebra teacher a super secret code for science spy or something? If Ben and Grace were both algebra teachers, and they were both involved somehow in what was going on, I hope we find out more about that. And finally, we know Revolution is successful because it was picked up for a full season, but there's another indicator that I've come across that shows just how popular Revolution is. I took my kids to the Oktoberfest street fair in our hometown, and there was a booth there, and there's a guy who sells rubber band guns. And we pass by that every year. We managed to go by and not succumb. But this year he had crossbows that shot suction cup arrows. And I went back to get one for my son, who saw it and fell madly in love. This is Paolo, who liked Revolution from the time we saw it at Comic-Con because of the swords and the crossbows. And by the time I got there, the guy had sold out every one that he had, and he was making some more. And I asked him if he always did this much business. And he said, no, it's that show Revolution. Everybody's buying the crossbow. So according to the crossbow scale of success, Revolution is a big hit, at least here in San Diego. So thanks again for all you do. I hope more people come and join us at the chat room. It gets more fun every week. And that's it. Bye.
The crossbow scale of success. I love it.
Yes, I do too. We actually had a festival, I guess, or a parade locally here where actually I live. And there was a guy selling rubber band guns and crossbows there, and he had a very similar story.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people that are watching the show.
Yeah.
Around our office, it seems like almost everyone I talk to is watching the show.
Yep.
So it's definitely the ratings were great again this week.
They were.
And like we mentioned, rumor has it it's been picked up for a second season. I say rumor. I don't want to discount anyone who has that. I just haven't seen an official press release from NBC, and that's a big thing coming very early. So I'm just very, very cautiously, very, very optimistic that's true. So yeah. But yeah, good stuff. And great to hear that people are joining in. I popped in last night about midnight my time, 10 o'clock Pacific, as the show was coming on, and I was working on the episode recap and thought I'll take a break from it and pop in. There's a good little crowd there, definitely more than two, like she mentioned or a couple weeks ago. That's great. People are getting on board.
Good.
The community is growing.
Good.
All right.
Now, she talks about Ben being an algebra teacher.
Yeah,
something we mentioned.
We talked about that.
It kind of makes me. It just kind of popped in my head is you bring up Clint a lot. Is he an algebra teacher?
I can neither confirm nor deny what Clint's day job is.
So he's an algebra teacher.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's an algebra teacher.
Just checking.
All right, let's listen to Kathleen.
Hey guys, this is Kathleen from Chicago. I'll turn to Kat. I wanted to call in about this week's Revolution episode, Plague Dogs. First, I want to say that this is probably my favorite episode so far. I actually cried when Maggie died. It was very sad. And I completely got that prediction wrong. I really thought that she was going to turn out to be a bad guy, but I kind of liked that they surprised me. In fact, I think they've been doing a great job giving the surprises and the twists and turns. I feel the writing has been really fresh. And I also feel like I'm starting to see some more weight and depth to the storylines and the characters. So overall, a great episode. Anyway, I have a question for you guys. On the last couple of podcasts, you'd mentioned that Rachel didn't really seem to be too brokenhearted over hearing about Ben's death. But in this week's episode, in the flashbacks, they seem to be painting a different picture, that Rachel and Ben were still very much a couple when she left, and that it seems to be the last time that they had seen each other. So my question is, now that this episode is there, do you still think that Rachel was not broken up about Ben being dead, or was she actually hiding her real feelings from Monroe? I don't know, maybe she had come up with some kind of backstory about why she left, and she didn't want Monroe to know how upset she was, or maybe some other reason why she didn't seem like she was too sad about it. Or if she really wasn't too broken up about it, what do you think happened in between that kind of broke her feelings with Ben? Because it seemed like they left, they were still, when she left, they were still pretty much together. I'm wondering if maybe she fell in love with somebody else. Maybe it was Miles. I mean, it did seem like they were about to spend some quality time together when he took her into his custody, and maybe some kind of Stockholm syndrome happened. I don't know. And maybe she was the one who turned him away from the dark side. And that was the reason why he left the militia. I don't know. But anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter, and I will save the rest of my reactions for the blog. In the meantime, nighty-night, and don't let the plague dogs bite.
Nice. That's a great sign-off.
I like that.
All right, so this is the feedback I mentioned earlier that was going to discuss Rachel's reaction when she found out of Ben's death and the relationship between her and Miles. I'll let you take it first.
Well, I think she has some wonderful points. I hadn't really considered hiding her feelings in the episode where Monroe tells her.
Yeah, I don't think I really had either.
Husband, kid, or dead. So I like that. I still think I still lean to something happened. I mean, from what we saw, and she mentions it does appear that at least my thoughts were wrong, that something happened. There was a falling out.
Right.
Because, like she said, they were still very much a couple. They were still together. It was a family unit.
It sure seemed that way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I still think that something happened to cause her to separate her feelings from him.
Yeah. There's more backstory there. We've said that a lot tonight, and it's true. There's a whole lot of backstory yet to learn on all of these folks, and she's been in his custody for 9 years.
Yeah.
We don't know what has happened. We don't know what the relationship was between Rachel and Miles when she went into his custody. We both speculated that there might have been something that developed between them, or maybe even existed at that point. I think it's all possible.
Yep.
My opinion hasn't changed. My intrigue level has gone up. How's that?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me think about Ben as well. I mean, Ben knows Miles is in Chicago, so did Miles tell him that Rachel was alive?
Right.
So I don't know if we mentioned that earlier, but that's something that's gonna.
I doubt it.
My mind.
I don't think Miles told anybody.
Yeah.
Dirty
I think
dog.
you're right.
The dirty plague dog.
Maybe he's the real plague dog.
Yeah, we'll get mail if we don't mention that the Plague Dogs is also a book that's by Richard Adams. I haven't read it. I'm not real familiar with it. I'll read the wiki here. It says it's about 2 dogs who escape an animal testing facility and are subsequently pursued by both the government and the media. They think that they have, I think, a disease or something, and it turns out they don't. But that's worth mentioning. That's also the name of a book.
Right.
All right, well, that is the feedback that we got in this week. A lot of great feedback.
Yes.
It sounds like everybody but Dave is on board with the show. And so, Dave, come back off the ledge, or go back on the ledge, whatever it is, whatever your position was on the ledge, get back there and come back.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks to everybody who sent that in. And that means it is time for our Twitter segment. I don't have the music queued up. I forgot to put that in the queue, so I'm not going to worry about it. Not going to worry about playing it. We'll just get started with the Twitter segment. So this week's question was, I'm trying to scroll over here on my phone while I'm doing this to get over to that section. Here we go. This week's question: were you surprised and satisfied with the way the death was handled in last night's Revolution episode? And we got some really cool responses this week. The first one came in from Zort70, and they said, I'm not sure I had connected too much with the character, so it was not a huge loss, but overall satisfied. No One's Minion says, I called who would die before the episode started and convinced my friend before it happened. Very heavy-handed foreshadowing. Not impressed. Tess315 says, I wasn't surprised by the death, but I was satisfied with the way it was handled. I wish she hadn't died, though. I liked her. Bianca Christine says, Maggie had a good death, but I was actually sad to see her go. I was just starting to like her character. Alternicat says, I believe seeing her kids' pictures was not adequate closure for her story. Her finding out what happened to them would have been better. We kind of touched on that earlier. Ted Grieve says, disappointed. They made it way too obvious, and even more so with NBC tweeting and asking who dies. Kathy Polka Dot says, Maggie was needed. Her death was handled well. I do not cry, so it must have been my allergies that caused the tear that hit my arm. I like that. Joey Williams says, I thought the crazy dogman stabbing her was a little weak, but I'm glad she was killed off. Not my favorite character. Dave Howarth says, I wish dying people would occasionally scream in pain instead of being fully lucid. Plus, I wasn't that attached to her. Browncoat Tom says, death was handled well. I didn't care for her character before tonight, but did a great job closing out her arc. Emo1281 says, don't hate me, but I wasn't crazy about the character. Glad she got to see her kids before she bit the dust, though. Darth TM says, no, I bloody wasn't satisfied. I liked her and wanted her to find her kids. I cried like a baby. You are a baby. I didn't say that. Lost Weather Guy says, you certainly called it on the last podcast, and it was abundantly clear from the first flashback. No surprise, but it was touching. Daymay2466 says, sad to see Maggie go, but happy how it went down. I've been happy at the different twists and turns revealed so far. And finally, a Twitter name that you will enjoy.
Is it a revolutionary?
No, it's from Padme Skywalker 1.
All right.
You like that? Padme says, liked how it tied into Charlie's feelings of loss, but was too predictable. Knew it for sure when the backstory began.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was predictable, but we both still felt like they did a great job of making us care, even though we saw it coming, and even gave us a moment of doubt along the way.
Yeah.
So, good. My kids are having a great, I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. My kids are in there doing something with my wife. They're having a great time. So, we're having a great time in here.
Always.
Yeah, we're closing out the podcast now. We want to tell you guys how you can get in touch with us. We've mentioned it kind of along the way. Our podcast is recorded live. If you want to come be a part of the live show, join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's over at goldenspiralmedia.com/live. Likewise, the live chat is going on during the continental U.S. time zones at the same address, goldenspiralmedia.com/live every Monday while the show is on the air. You can submit your theories and feedback in a number of ways. Email us or attach an audio file to feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com or just leave a voicemail. It's always on. The voicemail system is always on at 304-837-2278.
All right. And you can Twitter us at GSM Podcast. Or Facebook us at facebook.com/goldenspiralmedia.
Mm-hmm.
And please don't forget to rate us and review us on iTunes or any service that you do use. We appreciate it very much.
We do. And thanks again to all those that have done that. All right, Jeremy. Been a fun podcast tonight. Another long one. Almost 2 hours long tonight.
Sorry about that.
Lots of good stuff to talk about. Lots of great feedback that came in. We certainly appreciate all of that. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Revolution Podcast. And until next time, don't be afraid to put those ruby red slippers on, click your heels together, and say,
there's no place like home.
The Revolution Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Warner Brothers, or NBC. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, and for educational purposes as provided within United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. Check out our Revolution blog, live show, and other podcast productions at goldenspiralmedia.com. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.